Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Mirage Talk. Today, we're going to have Gali, who is going to talk to us about the shaping the tech leaders of tomorrow. Gali, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Ellie. Hi, good evening, everyone. And as I say to my students at Reichman University, that they have to open the cameras when I talk to them through Zoom. So I'll really appreciate it if you open the cameras because it will be much nicer for me to see your faces and how you react. And as leaders and as managers, we always have to keep this communication with our audience in order to understand that they are really with us and that they understand what we're saying and they're following and that they're having fun. So please open the cameras and please leave it open. I need this energy in order to give you everything that I want to give you within the next hour. So it's very, very nice to meet you all and good evening, connecting from California, the US, Israel, wherever you are. I'm talking to you from Israel, from Herzliya. It's 9:45 now, p.m. It's night, so it's after a very, very long day with lots of activity, but I'm still energized and happy to talk to you now. I'm going to take you through my journey with founders that I coach in my everyday life, and I will share a little bit about it in the next 45, 50 minutes. I'll introduce myself shortly. Wait, let's say that it's working. Yeah, so in my day-to-day, I'm actually a VC and startup coach. I'm working with founders in different stages, from very early stage until after IPOs and before IPOs. I actually work with the teams of the founders, or either just with the CEO. I also teach entrepreneurship in Reichman University, and in my one of my fun things to do is actually for the last 1 year, one and a half, I'm actually leading the Human Founder podcast, which is a podcast discussing the mental aspects of the entrepreneurial journey, in which I'm interviewing founders, investors, men, women, with their stories, what they have to share about what and how do they feel during their journey. We usually take the psychological aspect, the mental aspect, all the roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster that they are going through this journey, talking about their anxieties, about the things that make them, happy, the things that scares them, about their fears, about the imposter syndromes, and from like thousands of hours and hundreds of entrepreneurs I've been coaching in the last years, I really want to share with you a few of my insights and the way I see what's needed to be more, to happen more within the tech scene and tech leaders. And my angle is coming more from, startups, but it definitely relates to corporations and for organizations and to all other kind of organizations, because at the end, it all begins and ends with the same thing, which is people, and we all have the same common human behaviors, and we all need people. We all need to know how to press the right buttons. In my background, I studied law and psychology, and I have my MBA with focusing, majoring in psychological and business managerial psychology. And that's it. So let's dive a little bit deeper. And I want to talk to you today a little bit about how we should all embrace the entrepreneurial DNA, whether we're founders and whether we're actually even managers within big organizations, and what is few highlights of the psychology behind it, and a little bit about what it means to lead in a VUCA world, and to touch base about the relationship between co-founders, and then actually strategies to cope. How do we maintain our own well-being during this journey as leaders in the tech world? And I hope we'll have time also to touch about a little bit the culture of the organization, and if not, we'll leave something to next time. So as leaders, especially in tech, which is the tense levels are so high and the pressure is so high, and we have to deliver so many, outcomes in such a short times, and all the time, the stress from the investors and from the board and from the public, depends on the size of the company and the situation of it. So one of the main things that I always hear from the founders and the CEOs I coach is actually how lonely they feel in this journey. Like the main pain that goes through many CEOs that I'm working with is the fact that they're so lonely. Now, beyond that, because they're alone, even if they have co-founders, if they have spouse, they can't always you usually can't share everything that they have in mind and their feelings with other people. And together with this, they actually need to reinvent themselves all the time and to react to the personal and to the career life changes that happens. And they have to deal, for example, with firing people or closing the company, like things that we see today due to the current crisis that we're now going through, both in the whole world and in the tech world. And it sometimes we think only about the employees that are being fired and how it impacts them, but actually the leaders, the managers that have to lead all these changes is something which is very, very complicated emotionally for them to deal with. And not to mention the fact that even if more so if we're women founders, so there are many, many more things that we need to deal with as being women founders and being mothers and being the CEO of the household, and sometimes the relationship with investors, the way that in their communication. So there are many, many challenges that keeps all the time the founders out of their comfort zone, and they need to push boundaries all the time. And actually, if you're familiar, and if not, I'll mention it, one of the main terms that actually describes what happens today, and it's not a new one, it's something that was invented already back in the 90s in the American Army, is actually the term of VUCA. VUCA stands for a surrounding and a reality which is volatile and uncertain and complex and ambiguous, and that leaders have all the time to understand how to navigate and how to lead other people when things are not known, when things are not stable. And the COVID only just made it, more clear to everyone, because everyone are dealing with it. But actually, being part of VUCA world, it's what tech leaders and startup founders are dealing with all the time, because they don't know when will the next investment will come, and they don't know what will be with the next term sheet, and they don't know if the other competitor will come with a better technology tomorrow morning, and then their whole business model changes, etc. So the way that we need, or the mindsets that we need to embrace in order to deal with this VUCA world, in this VUCA reality that we're living in, is all the time to be bold and mindful and proactive, and to act in an agile state of mind. And these are the things that I'm going to dive deeper together with you today. How do we embrace those mindsets that actually help us to navigate all the decision making that we need to do and to take, and all the uncertainties that are part of our journey as tech leaders. So I really like this drawing, because this is one of it's like the roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster that the tech leaders are going through all the time, and the startup founders going through all the time. Because when I ask one of my founders, how do you feel today? So he tells me, I had a hit and a shit day, and it happened 17 times in the same day, because they got a term sheet, they lost the talent that they wanted to recruit. Everything happens so many, in such a high frequencies all the time. And this is exactly how they feel. They have the ups and they have the downs. And it's not that we're going to help them, eliminate it. But what we do want to try to do for you as leaders, and if you are investors in tech companies, etc., is to help normalize it a little bit. That the highest of highs and the lowest of lows won't be in such a, big gap, but a little bit more normalized. And you're not supposed to succeed to read everything that is here, but what I actually wanted to show here is that through the startup stages, from very early stage and after IPO, and it can be 6, 7, 10 years to the company, or scale up. It depends on the strategy that each company chooses or happens to be. So we have both the professional and the personal aspects that we need to deal with, because as leaders, and if we had more time, I usually like to open my conversation and understand who you are, where you're coming from, what do you do in order to fine tune the examples that I give. But since we're short on time, so I'll say it in more a general way, that being a parent, being a single, or being a children of someone, or having spouse, this is like on the personal life. Or in the professional life, being CEOs, that now we need to create, for example, the founders agreement in the legal aspect, or we need now in the HR to recruit people, or maybe to have layoff and to let go people. So the mental aspects actually accompanying us through all the stages of the startup, whether it is in the personal aspect and whether it is in the professional aspect, because at the end, every decision that we make even if it's like a professional and financial decision, it has psychological and behavioral mechanisms within it. And that's why understanding those mechanisms is so important. Now, Noam Wasserman, in his very known research from 2012, he already stated there that 65% of startups fail according to co-founders conflicts. And I can tell you and share, and it's true for co-founders, and it's also true to many other partnerships in business, that if the things don't sit in the right way, in the right manner between the two partners, the two co-founders, sometimes it's 3 or 4 or 5, usually for startup companies, it's between 2 to 4, 2 to 3. So we have to maintain those relationships and to see how we strengthen them in order to make sure that the company will thrive and will succeed, because at the end, this is the most important things. And as we know, investors, when they do due diligence to the companies, the most important thing that they are focusing on is actually the team. And what happens to us actually is that when we're not in a good mood and we're not in a good shape, so we have many, negative beliefs and negative language and negative stories that we tell to ourselves. Also, sometimes between founders and co-founders, we have what we call co-founders jealousy, that we actually jealous in each other. And all those things actually cause a lot of worry and stress and anxiety, and can also cause depression and many, many other psychological elements that happens there. And what those things are causing us is actually for several mental and behavioral things that really stops us from being the best leaders and tech leaders that we can. Some of the most important impact of it is that the sense of lack of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is actually this inner thing that they make us believe that we can do, that we can achieve whatever we want, do whatever we want, and succeed in it. And this is something which is very, very with a strong correlation, to success and to how do we define success. Other things that can happen is actually the procrastination, that we actually push things and don't want to address things because we have all those worries and all those negative beliefs with us that actually stops us from doing things, and we all the time procrastinate it for later, or actually avoiding things, preferring actually not to deal with things. And one of the main things that I see with many, many tech leaders that I work with closely is actually the imposter syndrome. In Hebrew, imposter syndrome, which is actually it's under the group of anxieties, and it's actually this feeling that someone is going to find out that we're actually lying, that we don't know what we're talking about, that we don't have the right answer, that there will be this question that I will not have any idea how to address and what to answer. And I won't say that everyone, but most of the founders, men, women that I speak with, and again, it's hundreds, they all suffer from the imposter syndrome. Usually, men will speak about it less in public, but when we speak like in private, so they always share about it. And imposter syndrome is not just a bad thing, okay? On the one hand, as long as it doesn't stop us from acting, from doing things, from going out there to the court and doing what we want, so it's okay. It's actually coming to maintain us, to keep us humble, and it's actually good. But we have to make sure that these things doesn't have too many prices, cost too many prices, and it actually stops us from doing things and from being the best leaders that we can. And that's why, from all those different reasons that I've just mentioned, working with the leader and the founder mental mechanism is the most important thing. And this is actually the X factor to help the startup to succeed or to fail. And I can tell you from so many startups that I'm working with, and so investors that I'm talking with, that really at the end, it all begins and ends there. Their mindset, their ability to cope with changes, their ability to solve disagreements that they have between themselves as co-founder, their ability to overcome obstacles. It all begins and ends in their mental mechanism and how they actually strengthen it all the time and maintaining it, so they will still be successful in the 5th year, in the 4th month, or in the 10th year, that they will keep this stamina and this resilience. And this is the bottom line that I would like you to take from this conversation, that both as people, both as managers, both as leaders, both as CEOs and business owners, whoever you are, I don't know what your occupation is, keeping on track your mental health and creating a psychological safety within your department and within your organization is a crucial thing to create an environment that is allowing it to its employees, to its managers, to its investors. And in order to have the psychological safety, we have to keep in healthy communication, and we have to maintain strong relationships with our colleagues, employees, managers, investors, the whole stakeholders that are around us. And those things will help us maintain our resilience, and that will lead to a startup, venture, corporation, organization, whatever kind of organization growth. Because at the end, with all the technology, and you know what, it will be in the next slide, so I won't mention it now. So, any questions so far? Or should I continue and you'll ask it if you have something at the end? Okay, so if you have, and if I didn't see the chat, you can just, unmute and just speak up. I like it when you interrupt me. So when we talk about startups, we need the funding, and we need the product, and we need the market, and the competition, and the team, and we also need luck. Some people won't say it, but this is definitely something we need. Definitely in tech startups, it's always good in life, but definitely in tech companies that there are so many components and so many elements that are changing. And if we have the good product in the market, so this is actually the product market fit. But what I want to say that beyond all these pizza slices or these pie charts that we're looking here, in order to create the success, in order to succeed, there is this mental layer that it actually goes through all the different aspects of what we need in startups. It goes through the team and the luck and the funding everywhere. And this mental layer, if I'll zoom into this mental layer, so imagine that you take only the inner circle now, and it's moving to the next slide. And this is how I see the mental layer and what it actually includes. So I'll go not too fast, although I speak fast, not too fast, but I'll go over those things. And then in the next slides, I will dive deep into some of those components. So actually what I say, and what is my thesis, that as tech leaders, it all begins with our why and values and vision and understanding our strength and our competitive advantage and how we're actually going to lead, and the choice, understanding the choice that we're now going to create a new startup. We're going to leave everything behind that happened before. We're going to make all this sacrifice and to start actually to build a startup. So let's assume that all those this white circle is actually things are in place, and we understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and we're very connected to our why and values, and we want to build our company in according to our values and vision. And most important thing is that the founders will be also aligned around it. Okay, what happens if not? We'll speak about it soon. Then the next level is actually communication, because communication is our basic way to communicate with people, right? Now, communication does not necessarily mean speaking. There are many different ways of communication. It's our body language, it's our smile, it's the way we respond. It's also the way that we're being quiet and just listen to the other side and not necessarily responding to what others say, okay? Excuse me. Communication also can be without words. Communication can be with our pauses, and communication also can be between people, who cannot speak. So communication is also in the WhatsApp or the iMessage or the emails and the way we choose to express ourselves. So this is communication. And this external pie chart, so these are the components that from thousands of hours of working with founders, these are the things that I found out that are most crucial in order to create this mental layer in a strong and sustainable way. And what it actually includes. So I'm taking you against the clock from left to right. So it starts with by the way, it doesn't have to have exactly, the same portion of it. It can be a little different, but just to emphasize it. So it all begins with our mental resilience and the grit, as Angela Duckworth described it, and the perseverance and our ability actually to continue with all our might, even when it's hard. And this is actually resilience. The definition of resilience is not from the dictionary. It's something that I just wrote here. It's actually like a cat. Doesn't matter what happens to us. We're always following our feet and continuing with all our might. And it's actually, I always like to do it with my founders. It's actually that movement, if you take your hands for a second, those that are with me, take your hands, lift it. I see you, Christopher, Gordon, Ellie. So it's just, you're falling, and then it's how quickly you're bouncing back. How quickly you're bouncing back and from falling and continue with all your might to pursue whatever it is you need to do. The second thing is actually the emotional strategies. How do we allow our feelings and psychological states to come into reality, to describe our emotions, to describe our feelings, and also to enable others to bring their feelings into the situation, into the conversation. For example, do we allow other people to cry in conversations that we have? If as managers, if leaders, what happens if one of our employees entering into a conversation and begins to cry? How do we respond to it? How do we deal with it? As managers, it's not easy, okay? It's something that we need to practice and to understand what is our attitude towards it. The third thing is actually our leadership skills or operating system. This is the OS. And this is actually everything that has to do with the decision making and the creativity and our performance and our ability to lead in a VUCA world, what we've just described. So all those capacities, it's actually under the leadership skills that we embrace. Then we have the growth mindset, okay? How do we learn from failures, and what is the entrepreneurial DNA that we have within us, and how agile are we in order to deal with everything that comes and to change it? Then we have the relationships that we want to strengthen with co-founders, with investors, with the board members, with our partners at home, and with our employees, with all the stakeholders that we have. Then there is this our attitude towards money and financial aspects and abundance, and how we actually feel towards the way that the company is growing, and how do we see our growth towards it. And then the last aspect is actually the time and the energy management that both together are actually helping us understand if we are being an effective founders and managers and leaders or not. And being effective doesn't necessarily mean to be the most efficient one. There's a difference between being efficient and effective. And we want to be effective, to make sure that the things that we do and the energy that is being put into different tasks and different things that we do is actually taking us to the right place. And the way I see it, in order to be a successful leader and to make other people go after you and follow you and be inspired by you, we all the time need to maintain these whole cycles and these whole portions of the pie and make sure they're in place. So, we have as a company, we have the values and the vision and the mission and the OKRs, and we have work plan, and we know what to do, right? And then sometimes we find ourselves stuck that we cannot act. And we need to understand what is going on there, why we want to execute now a very strategic plan and it doesn't happen, or why we need to make now some strategic move, or to buy a company, or to let go one of our board members, or to recruit new talents, or to do many, many other things, or to have a relocation, or many different challenges and decisions that we need to make as tech leaders, or to let go of this product line, or to bring another technology or whatever. And the fact is that we have intrinsic and external barriers that stop us from doing things. Now, it's only a partial list. It doesn't mean that this is all. It's only some of the things. But many of the things that I see, and I'll just touch base a few of the bullet points in here, is that it's very easy for us as leaders to speak about our fear of failure, okay? Because this is something which is more common to talk about. We have a fear of failing. We don't want to have bad results. We don't want to disappoint others. We don't want to other things that we're not good enough, or that we don't know what we're doing, etc. But one of the other fears that is less spoken and is very, very, it's happening a lot, is actually the fear of success. And one of the things that I see with leaders and tech leaders and CEOs is they have a lot of fear of succeeding and what it actually means. Because once you didn't have you didn't recruit fundings, or you didn't bring the good people and talents, or the technology, or you don't yet have a product market fit, so it's one thing. But once you're succeeding, then there's this expectation that you will continue to succeed all the time. If you already nailed it, and if you already made it, So it means that you know what you're doing, right? And you need to continue to lead in that way. And this is a very, very stressful situation to be in. And it's also something that it's like people don't talk about it because what am I being fear of succeeding? But yeah, there is a very, very big fear there. And I'll even say something else. Even founders that already had made an exit or IPO, for example, in the NICE or NASDAQ or other stock exchange, etc. So it's like one of the best and highest peak performance moments that they have, and they're very happy about it. And it's very, very, touching and a big achievement. But then what happens the second afterwards? The second afterwards, they finish with it. The company is already public and they are very successful. And they also have a lot of money in the bank and they have this beautiful home that they want. And like they have everything materialistic that money can buy. But then what I feel there is a lot of emptiness and actually a question, what are they going to do with themselves now? Because all their time and all their energy and all their, all the things, all their efforts were directed into this direction. And then all of a sudden they already made it. So what is the next thing? And how do we come out of this? And how do we continue? So there is a lot of things to manage and also to address after we're succeeding. Some of the things that I found out from really a lot of teams that I'm working with is that we have, I'll dive deep a little bit about the types of founders that we have, types of teams, co-founders that we have. So actually, I found out that we have three in high level, okay? It's, of course, everything is a spectrum and it can vary, but we have three types and I'll explain what happens here. So the first type, which is on the left side, it's when we have a very strong CEO and we have collaborative founders. It's usually that the CEO is already very experienced and he knows what he's doing and maybe he had an exit in the past and he may be more mature and more experienced, etc. And he will have co-founders that are supporting him. They're not always agreeing, but they're committing with what is going on there. And that's okay with them. It serves them as well. On the other side of this, we have type 2, which is the equal co-founders, which is usually a founders team that in the past they already had exit or they came from the same school or from the army unit and they came together and they have this usually the same shareholding and they are in good relations and there isn't anyone who is leader more than the others and they're pretty equal. So the advantage of it is that they are getting along usually good together and they have a lot of respect to the decision making. But sometimes the disadvantage of it is that it takes more time to make the decisions because it has to be very democratic, okay? The way that they analyze and then discuss everything. Now, on the other axis of it, actually the other side of type 1 is type 3. What happens there? We have the same strong CEO like in the first type, but we have resisting founders. What does it mean that we have resisting founders? That everything that the CEO wants to promote and to communicate and to do and to achieve, they are all the time, they're very, very much driven from ego and from who said what and who will have, the credit on different things. And they're struggling to create their own space, their own place. And then there will be a lot of negativity and a lot of energy spent in order to create all the time this alignment and this sense of better feelings between the co-founders. And this is problematic. When we see types of tech leaders that are usually of type 3, there are many struggles and there are many crises and a lot of work on their communication and the way that they try to learn a little bit to come towards the other. And this is something that if I'll go to the next slide, so if you are already investors that you choose your co-founders, or if it's like the second or third episode of your life and you want now to create a new startup, to establish a new startup, so these are the things that I find out from many conversations with the founders that may work and help you to fine-tune your choice in order not to be type 3, okay? In order to be type 1 or type 2. And even dive a little bit deeper on the right side here, which is during. So it's not only for co-founders, it's only for also for your partners and your leadership. If you're leading a very big corporate, or if you are in a senior managerial position and you have many peers around you. So those things are also true to you and the way that you need to address them. And I think the most important, I mean, everything is important, but the most important thing here is actually begins and ends with listening. And when we listen to the other side, and when we really hear and coming with an open heart to see what do they have to say and what do they want, so this is the basics for a good communication. One of the things that we see a lot between co-founders is actually the point of ownership and the boundaries, and how do we make sure that we don't overstep on the different domains that each co-founder actually bring with him. And another thing is actually, you know, how do we learn to let go when we need, and to also put our ego aside. And this is also something that is usually true, to understand that we're coming from the right places to the conversation and not driven by our ego. So, wait, okay. So, I spoke about many problems and issues and things between tech leaders and co-founders, and I want to suggest several things and several mindsets of how we can actually address it. So I'll touch a few of them. One of the things that's in my toolbox and that I try to address to the founders that I coach and to many startup leaders and tech leaders is some of those mental tools that will be actually part of the toolbox, and it has to do with mindfulness and positive psychology and from coaching, and few elements that comes from a CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and from ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. And of course, there are also many other kinds of therapies and different kinds of psychological therapies that people are more than welcome to address. And there are also many digital apps that helps us today to maintain our wellness, our well-being, and being more mindful leaders in order to help others follow us and continue to aspire the people that actually around us. So my main message about it, and what we're going to dive deeper now, is actually that we're not broken and you're not broken, and we don't need to try to fix anything. We just need to try to dive deeper with ourselves and to see how we can fine tune, how can we do some things that are better, how to embrace this growth mindset, and to dance with all the beliefs that we have in our minds and actually their execution and their performance in the reality. So a few words about mindfulness. Gali MT, what time do we have? They'll be aware of the time. I'll mind the time.
Let's see. We have until around about 25 more minutes altogether.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So let's have a few words about mindfulness. So mindfulness is actually a mental state. For those of you who are not familiar, it actually happens and allows us to increase our sense of consciousness and awareness of things in a curious and non-judgmental way. And those words are really important components of it, because embracing the curious point of view, it's like the beginner's eyes. It's like every time that we have a new employee coming into our team or into our startup or into our company. So one of the best things to do will be to ask him, what do you see here? Because they have fresh eyes and they see things that we cannot see any longer because we're already very rooted in what happens. And non-judgmental way, something which is very difficult for human beings in general and for leaders and tech leaders especially, because we're judging all the time, and we can say that we're not judging, but we're judging all the time, and you're judging me when I'm talking now, and I'm judging you, and I'm judging those who open the camera and those who close the camera, and you're judging my hand movements and my English and my background and my presentation, and you also judge who came together with you to the conversation, and it's very natural, and it's okay. So the first thing is actually to acknowledge it and to be aware that it happens, and we can say whatever we want, but it happens. Now the question is how we can try and fine tune it a little bit and be aware that we're actually doing it, and then maybe to try to for it. I've been practicing mindfulness for many, many years now in different various ways. And I always try to give some of those foundations also to the leaders and the CEOs that I coach, because mindfulness is really, really impactful, and it's very, very research-based. Mindfulness have many advantages. It's existing for years in the East. In the last century, it came also to the West, and there is a lot of research about mindfulness. And nowadays, we also, even in hospitals, they use mindfulness in order to treat people with severe diseases and illnesses, and it really impacts the ability to really have a relief from stress, and it really, really helps to better our memory and our quality of sleep, and it helps to reduce stress, and it helps us also to be more focused and not to be distracted from many, many things that happen. And it helps us also in the neurological things that happens in our brain to create new connections and to connect between the areas that are actually in charge of our response to stress and to anxiety, and to our prefrontal cortex, which is like the higher level of thinking and activities and what we do in mindfulness. Also shown that it actually helps to strengthen all the connections that happens in the mind, and it's really, really, really impactful. And this is one of the things that I would really recommend to try to do. And I'll give you elements to your toolbox of how you can actually do it in your everyday life as leaders, and also to help it with your founders. I can tell you that I just opened a session with one of my founders in the West Coast, like yourself, last week. And I asked him, how are you? And he said, I'm dying, I'm so tired. I have no energy. I can't have it anymore. And in that moment, doesn't matter that we had so many things to talk about, and just stop, let's breathe. Let's do some mindfulness. And we actually stopped for 7 minutes. This is the way that we opened our session. And I did with him a body scan, which I will do with you in a second. And really for 7 minutes, we were in a different place. I did it with him via Zoom. We can do it in any methodology that we want. And he was like so fresh afterwards, and his mind was in a different place, and he could speak about what is happening, with the product and with the investors and with all the different verticals that we need to go over during their sessions. And it really, really made a change in the way that he responded to what happened. So actually, few important anchors for mindfulness that you can pay attention to. First of all, is to use our breathing as an anchor. Once we learn how to breathe, inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth, and expand our body and give more air to the different parts of our body. So, you always have your breathing. No one can take it from you as long as you're healthy, wherever you are in the airplanes, before a performance, big performance, before a lecture, before a board meeting. You always have your breathing that you can use as an anchor to get more relaxed, you get more refreshed, and to be focused and gain yourself to the way that you want to perform. Trying to be present in the moment. This is something that happens a lot in board meetings and in product meetings and in different kinds of meetings, that instead of being really present in what is happening, we're all the time disrupted and worried about things that happens, the other voices that we have and what is happening at home, with what's happening with our children. And we're now talking about this technology, but what happened with this line of products, and we're all the time dealing with other things, and we're not actually present in the moment. And that is a use of it's not a good use of our energy, and it's not effective. And through mindfulness, we learn more and more to be present in the moment. The non-judgmental part, I spoke about it earlier, that how do we actually learn how to do it? So when we practice mindfulness, all the time the thoughts are coming back, and we are starting to think about all the things that are disturbing us. But being patient about it and telling yourself, thank you for this thought, and I let you go now, is actually being non-judgmental to the fact that it actually happens to us. And this is one of the most incredible things that really mindfulness help us to pay attention to the fact of how judgmental we are to everything that happens to us. Practicing gratitude, it's very easy. There are so many ways to do it, and it really increases dramatically our sense of happiness and our ability to see things, and the ability, to be grateful and thankful for the things that happens to us. at work, at home, with our families, not to take things for granted. And it's really, the small things that you can do, just like write down 3 things every night before you go to sleep about the things that happened to the day, or actually having practicing a gratitude meditation in the morning for 5-7 minutes, just to be grateful to everything that you have now, for your breathing, for the good coffee that you had, for this exciting product that you're working on, for the great surrounding that you have at work, or even for the fact that thanks to COVID, you can work from home half of the week, right? So it's also something to be grateful for. And it's all a part of mindset that we choose to embrace and to see how we can see the good in things. One of the methodologies that I like the most in mindfulness is actually body scan. I wanted to practice it with you. Maybe if you want to have questions, I'll do it with you later on, because I do want to convey a few more messages. But it's really amazing. And the idea is just to be rooted to the ground, sitting, lying, whatever you feel like. It can be 3 minutes, 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. And just through the breathing, give attention to every part of your body from head to toes. Just like inhale and exhale and bring the air, bring the oxygen into the different parts of your body. And it really creates a lot of, something which is relaxed and is fun. And I really, really invite you to try it. And if we'll have a few minutes, we'll do it at the end. So let's see what are the things that I want. Okay, I want to focus on this because I don't have a lot of time. So I will jump between a few things. We spoke about the operating system. Now, as you know, in Israel, we all have to go to the army. This is mandatory, right? And we always, in one of the biggest toll, like what you learn in the army, especially in the Air Force, is the debriefing, the tahkir in Hebrew, okay? This is something that all the people that come from the Air Force really bring it together with them later on to business. And one of the things that I do automatically, I don't even think about it, this is my way of thinking. And this is how I also practice with my founders and leaders to practice it themselves. It's actually the modus operandi circle. I'm always for modus operandi. How do we teach ourselves to act this way all the time about the smallest thing that happened and about the biggest thing that happened? And I explain. So, you do something, you make an action, whether it is, I don't know, a presentation, a pipeline, a marketing meeting, a budget, a balance sheet, whatever it is, you make an action. Then this action has a result. And then you debrief this result. You ask yourself what happened there and where did it lead you? Then you have insights. Was this result the answer to the expectation that we have? Is this what we wanted to reach? Is this where we wanted to get? So these are the insights. And then you'll have understanding whether yes or whether no. Then you have options. If it was something good that the options that you will want to have is actually to duplicate it and to continue to do the same. And if it wasn't good and where it led you, it wasn't a good result of what you wanted to achieve. So we have options to tweak something, to change something, to make something different in order to reach to a new situation, to a new resolution, to a new result. And this is actually the pink arrow that we have there. So try to imagine it and try to practice it from now on. Just see if it works for you, if it makes sense to you, that every thing that you're doing in life, whether it is with your spouse, children, parents, at home, and whether it is in your professional life and at work, at business, the corporation, organization that you're working, how you're actually learning to analyze and to debrief everything that is happening to you. And this is actually the learning, lemida. This is the learning that you have from the situation. What do you want to duplicate? What do you want to change? And by behaving that way all the time, we actually leveraging and learning how to do things better. And we are improving our own self-management and our own modus operandi, our own way of us operating in this world. So this is the tool that I really recommend to try and practice. It's really powerful and it really helps us to analyze everything that we do in business and to really improve our results. I can tell you that from pitching to investors and understand who's the right investor for us and what worked and what didn't work on the one hand, or from trying to close a deal with strategic partner and client and to see whether or not the negotiation that we just been through is really working, it's really powerful. So analyzing it through this circle will really give us the answer whether we worked in the right direction or not, and how to tweak it and to change it. So it's really recommended. This is also something that I will touch. I always say that in the beginning of my presentations that I want you in this presentation at the end to feel just 15% better. And why it's just 15% better? From Professor Coral Robin, and in her course, that usually the tech leaders call it touchy-feely. She actually speaks about 3 zones: the zone of safety, which we are inside, the zone of learning, and the zone of danger. And the idea is all the time to go out of our comfort zone, of our zone of safety, not too little, not too much, just the 15%. And you know, this 15% is growing all the time, because every time the 15% is from a different hole, right? So this 15% is growing. And think about it, that everything that you're stuck in, whether it is in your personal life, with your spouse, in your leadership, you have some peer or some colleague that you're not managing the relationship with him, or you have something that you're stuck on the technological aspect that you need to develop, doesn't matter your kind from. All the time trying to tweak it in 15%, going out of your comfort zone to the zone of learning, to learning something new, to trying something else, to pivoting into something else. This is where the learning is happening all the time. And this is a very powerful thing to do all the time, a little bit, just to push your boundaries and to learn something new. The Eisenhower metrics, and these things, if you remember the circle that I spoke about in the beginning, these things are more addressing actually our ability to be effective leaders. Because at the end, as managers, CEOs, leaders, founders, C-level, senior managers, doesn't matter what is your title, the most crucial task that is, at least the way I see it, being a mother of 3, being a senior executive, being an investor, being a coach, being a lecturer, being all the hats that I'm wearing, is actually managing my time. I need to manage my time in the best possible way in order to, in order to succeed doing everything that I want to do, right? So again, like the modus operandi circle, this Eisenhower matrix is actually something that is so built in within my mind and the way that I work, that every time I ask myself, is this task that I have now is something which is urgent and important, then I do it. It's something that only I have to do and only I can do, and I just do it now. Is this task that now I'm addressing is not urgent but important? So yeah, it has to be done, but it doesn't have to be done now, right? I can schedule it for about a week, in a few days from now, etc. So I'm scheduling it. Is this something it's not is urgent, but it's not important that I will be the one who's owning it and doing it? So I'll give it to someone else to do it, okay? I will delegate it. And if it's something that it's not urgent and it's not important, I'm just deleting it. Because guys, at the end, we cannot do everything we want. We can always have this, to-do lists, checkups, and we'll never get to everything down there. And all the time we need to review it. And I think that one of the most important muscles that leaders has to have is this ruthless prioritization of what is the urgent and the important things that they need to address all the time. And having strengthening this muscle all the time of how to be with the best prioritization abilities that we have is really crucial to practice and actually behave that way. And it doesn't matter if it's in your personal life or professional life. So I find this the Eisenhower metrics a very powerful tool in my toolbox to really practice and to navigate my calendar around it and to choose the things that I want to do around it. And I also invite you to start and try and implement it within your life as part of the being effective. You remember this quarter they spoke about being effective. So this is another very major tool in this toolbox. I know I don't have much time because I want to leave a few minutes for questions. So another thing that is important for me to mention is that we're also, life is so hectic and we have so many things to do, and the tasks are just more and more all the time. And even if it's things that has to do with our real estate or home utilities or children or family or growing parents or the bank accounts or the cap table or the sales team or everything that is under our responsibility, and we have so many things to do. Even if we'll delete few, there will still be so many others. So I find that those 3 things, and one of them I already mentioned in before, to embrace them into our toolbox. It's all coming from a positive psychology. And this, first of all, speaking in a positive language with ourselves, with our team members, with our spouse, family, children, bring inside a compassion, the ability to speak in a positive language, because sometimes when we're so stressful, so the way we speak is like very short, it's very sharp, it's very like harsh, it's not necessarily polite. And people have feelings, and that way, being more mindful to the way that we speak to each other, even if in the stressful times, this is where we're being measured, is something very, very important. The use of the positive language. The other thing I like to call it the anchors of joy. Guys, we can't just work all the time. Having those breaks, having time in sports, music, meeting with close friends, dates with ourselves, having time in the calendar to be with ourselves, to open our mind, to read something, to have this strategic thinking, everyone and what works for him or her. It's really crucial in order to be more mindful in the way we lead, because we are not machines and we cannot just work all day long. And even if we work 10 to 15 hours a day, and that's okay, sometimes it happens, we have peak timings, it's okay. We need to find the time to what makes us feel good and to put it in the calendar, because otherwise the machine that calls our body won't make it in the long run, okay? And the last things, I like to call it the anchors of achievement or success log, is what I mentioned earlier, is the gratitude. I really like to have this list. I have this Excel list for many, many years. At the beginning, I used to do it every day. Now I do it just once in a while, when I feel that I'm fulfilled with many, many good things that happen. Just write it down, the things, the success that you have, the achievements that you have, and really look at this and tell yourself, I made it. I made this progress. I achieved this. This is something that was very, very big. I broke it into small pieces. Now I achieved this and this and this, and I'm growing and I'm keeping forward. And this is something that is also very, very important, to my opinion, to maintain. I won't touch the company culture and DNA because we just don't have the time for it. So I really invite you, to take a few things from what you just heard today in order to implement it in your day-to-day life and really be more mindful in the way that you lead others, in the way that you're inspiring others. Because at the end, you have to ask yourself, why would others follow me? Why would others want to go after what I'm saying, to keep, with all the competition that there is in the tech world and in the different startups and different tech companies, and the money and the compensation? Even nowadays, with the world crisis, with everything that happens, there's still competition. There are still many good companies. Why would other people stay in my company? And the understanding that, I'll go back to this slide in a second, the understanding that at the end, we are all humans. And at the end, looking into each other's, the white in the eyes, this is what, and the smile and the connection, the interpersonal connection, that's what unites people together, and that's what keeps people, following you and be together with you, even in the difficult times. I'm welcoming you really to scan it and to follow my podcast. And there's so many interesting conversations there with the leaders and with investors from Israel, from the world, about different aspects of what they're going through. How do they embrace those mindsets into their lives? And I really, really invite you to listen. There's a lot of wisdom there. And I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. If you have something in the chat, if you want me to emphasize more on any of the topics that I just touch base, if you have some question or whatever, I'll be more than happy to answer it.
Thank you, Gali. That was a lot of positive and lots of information. The presentation went very well. If you have any question now, it's time. You can open your mic and ask, or just write it in the chat. And Gali, you did talk about debriefing. We had here a Mirage talk about a year ago from a guy who's an ex-Air Force pilot who opened a company that is based on the debriefing process.
השמיים או הטייסת?
השמיים.
Yeah. So they both companies took actually those methodology and things from them and really implemented. And yeah, it's true. It really works, and it's really, really important.
Yeah.
So if you want to ask something or say what you think, I'm more than happy to answer. If not, that's also okay. Okay, so these are my
Thank you very
contact
much.
details. If you feel like touch basing, or if you want to write to me something later on. And I hope you took something together with you from this 45, 50 minutes conversation. And, to implement one small thing is into your day-to-day life and into your managerial experience and into your, relationships. Really remembering that at the end, it's all about people, as cliche as it may be, but we all have, the same human mechanisms that are similar for many situations. It's all questions of how we address the challenges that are, how address, thank you, Shannon, how we address this, situations, and how we really bring ourselves as managers and as leaders, especially in an environment which is, so much of competition and so stressful, and the expectations to deliver are so high. So us as leaders has a lot of importance how mindful we are to our employees, to our colleagues, because at the end, this is the secret sauce that will keep people in our companies, in our team. It's not the money, it's not the compensation. They can get it elsewhere. It's not even the hybrid work. It's not especially working nowadays with millennials and the younger generations, that they have a totally different mindset. And even us as leaders, and I see here people in their 40s, in their 50s, maybe even more. So we bring our own experience in the way that we brought and the way that we were raised. But nowadays, generations in the workforce are bringing new things. And if we want to be smart enough to make those adjustments in order to, be more aligned with the way that they see things, they will simply won't stay with us. And this is something very important for us as leaders, especially in the tech world, but not just, to understand and to go a little bit towards them.
Thank you, Gali, for enriching the Mirage Tribe. Thanks for your time. Just a reminder, a link to the recording of this presentation will be available on the Mirage Talk website. Also, we have a very busy summer with a presentation, a talk every Monday for the next month and a half. So you can check out the schedule on the Mirage Talk website. Thank you, Gali.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.